Christian denominations of Calvinism and Southern Baptist, very fundamentalist Christian groups, I learned in therapy class that based on the people who are most likely to perpetrate and prey on vulnerable women and children are straight cis men. And I've heard some stats about that, which is ironic because religious people think that gay men are most likely to prey. And I basically found out that 1 out of 33 church men who are cis, straight, and heterosexual are the most likely to commit sex crimes, especially in the environment of a church, which does little to no consistent eradication of these kind of predators. I mean, goodness sakes, their ideology and religious doctrine basically gives men the keys to the kingdom. And I've learned not to romanticize or look on men of this caliber with nostalgia because of the statistics involved. Looking back, I went to churches that on average had about 115 to 150 people. So if 50% of the people in church were men and the other 50% were women, I would say 10% were also kids. So in a 125 people, 65, there was at least 45 men. So, looking at that, there's at least 2 predators in every church I was ever in, and I've been in 7. The churches that had 400 people, you're looking at 6 to 10 predators. Yeah, I'm so happy I did not know certain things when I was a child. And you'd say, well, isn't knowing better? Not when you're in any position that can't do anything about it. When you find out that you grew up in the Protestant denomination that has the highest sex abuse for children and vulnerable women, knowing it as a child, probably I wouldn't have slept at night on Saturdays if I had known that. And I'm glad I didn't know until I was on my own where I could make decisions about church. So, yeah, it's kind of one of those things where being forewarned is forearmed unless you can't do anything to protect yourself, and then I'd rather not know. I cannot believe that my parents took me to a denomination like that. I mean, how could you grow up in the 50s to when I started going to church and actually knew what planet I was on, which would have been 2001 toward 2025? How could you not know in the 2000s that sex abuse didn't happen in church? How could my parents take me to the most prolific denomination in Christianity for child abuse? I mean, I don't care what the pros are. If I know that there's rampant abuse in the Boy Scouts, I'm not taking my kids to the Boy Scouts. If I know that a group of people are the most likely in a religion to harm kids, I would not take them there. Even if I was there 100% of the time, I would not take my kids there. I mean, and that's something I have to work out in therapy. My parents either didn't care enough to find out if it was going on in that denomination, or taking their kids to a church was more important than staying as far away from the most prolific denomination in Christianity. church at all is better than taking them to a denomination with the worst prolific child abuse in history. I don't care if the Bible says you're supposed to be in church. If the closest one to you is Baptist, and I mean, yeah, I try not to think about it. I'll get mad. It's just terrible. I feel bad for kids who grew up Catholic and United Methodist, and now Seventh-day Adventist. I can't think of the one that they came out recently. Church of God? Is that it? No, Assemblies of God. Yeah, there is not one Christian denomination that has not had rampant child abuse. And it begs to question, if parents have any inkling that this is possible, why would you take your kids there? I mean, I don't understand. And my parents will justify it and say, well, we had to go somewhere. No, you don't. You don't have to go to church. It's not the law. It's not like, well, we had to find a school. Schools are required by law. Going to church is not. And they knew child abuse was occurring because they told me that a family that had moved into the church when I was a teenager had barely escaped child abuse. Grooming had gone on, but not child abuse, thankfully. The mother pulled them out of that environment and then went to another possible abusive environment. You don't have to take your kids to church at all. It's not a state or a requirement by law. You do not have to take your kids anywhere but to school and the doctor. I mean, what is wrong with these people? If I know that certain places are the most likely to harm my kid, I'm not taking them there. I would rather teach them about the Bible at home than take them to a denomination that's known for covering up child abuse. It does not wash, and it never has, and I have to live with that. And therapy is a good way to come to terms with just how awful and how people who were supposed to protect you took you to places that luckily you weren't hurt, but tripled your chances of being hurt. And you have to find a way to live with that. Is unimaginable. Like, how do you live with that? I don't know. My therapist always tells me, anger is appropriate when you've been hurt or when you weren't protected by the people who should have protected you. And I have to live with that. So, it's not easy, and sometimes I get mad. And getting mad is an appropriate feeling. So, growing up in this environment, nobody taught me about child abuse. No one taught me about grooming. No one taught me about bodily autonomy. And if anyone touches you in these places, you come to me immediately. Nobody ever taught me how to protect myself. They taught me that women were supposed to be silent and obey men at all costs. I grew up in an environment that created a situation that if something happened, I would be the least likely to tell anyone or go to the police. So I am angry, and at some point I'm going to have to deal with that. I'm going to have to deal with all of this. But right now other stuff when I'm emotionally and mentally able to handle it. So it's not okay. And it never, never, never will be okay.